Resuming our program, I am pleased to introduce our special musical guests. Presented by Johnny Walker, championing social justice for nearly 200 years, Andra Day and Common singing Stand Up for Something, written by Diane Warren and Common from the film Marshall. Andra Day and Common!
You can have all the money in your hand, all the possessions anyone can ever have, but it's all worthless treasure. True worth is only measured not by what you got, but what you got in your heart. You can have everything, but what does it mean? It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. 'Cause you can't just talk the talk, you got to walk that walk. Yes, you do. It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. And I stand up for you. And I stand up for you. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. You do the best that you can do. Then you can look in the mirror, proud of who's looking back at you. Define the life you're living, not by what you take, but what you're giving. And if you bet on love, there's no way you'll ever lose. Take a stand, make a stand for what's right. It's always worth the fight. It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. 'Cause you can't just talk the talk, you got to walk that walk. Yes, you do. It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. And I stand up for you, self-respect, dignity. If that's all you got, then you got all you need. And without that, you don't have a thing. Oh, no.
Rise up, love, lift your hands. I stand with you cause I understand. Ain't here to judge, just to take a stand. The greater plans, the creator's plan. Let's all rise like the day began. Reach out and touch with the Savior's hand. On rock we stand like it's native land. Let the ways of love be the ways of man.
If you don't stand for something, 'cause you can't just talk the talk. You got to walk the walk. Yes, you do. It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. And I stand up for you.
ACLU, come on, clap. These days we dance. These days we dance between love and hate. Don't know the date, so we stay awake. A knee we take for our soul's sake. New victory off of old faith. A president that trolls with hate. He don't control our fate because God is great. When they go low, we stay in the heights. I stand for peace, love, and women's rights. Stand up for something.
Can we just get another round of applause for that song, though? My God. They're still singing back there, too. I'm just so happy to be here, first of all, to have a microphone, to have a camera, and to have no Trump supporter to my left or my right. Oh, it's good. Oh, it's good. So happy. So happy. So I get a chance to just say what I think. Some people fight with sound bites. Some people fight with lawsuits. Some people fight with protests. It's very rare, though, to have an individual whose imagination itself is a weapon and a tool in the struggle for human rights and human dignity. But the imagination of Reginald Hudlin is that weapon and is that tool in the struggle for human rights and human dignity. Reginald Hudlin is a special person in this country, but he's especially important to those of us from communities that are very rarely represented at our height and our highest expression and aspiration. Reginald Hudlin has, in a land of magic and make-believes, a special magical power to take the same screen and use it in two ways. On the one hand, when Hudlin puts up a production, it is a window. It's a window into the best of Black America. It's a window into our highest hopes, our highest dreams. But it is also for us a rare mirror where we can see reflected back to us who we are and who we want to be and who we wish we were. Who else but Reginald Hudlin would have the imagination to take a Thurgood Marshall off of a pedestal and put him back down into the grit and the grime and the struggle of the early movement, and by so doing, elevate him even further? Only a Reginald Hudlin would have the imagination to do that, and he did that with the film Marshall. Who else but Reginald Hudlin, as a young man, would be able to take something as simple and common as a house party and use it to celebrate and to intoxicate and to excite a whole generation about just how we be and how we get down, and to make it universal? Only Reginald Hudlin could make a house party a cultural event, but he did that with his first film. Who but Reginald Hudlin could take something as complicated and as painful and as risky as slavery, and somehow through Django, tell a love story to remind people that no matter how many times we're chained or whipped or beaten, African American human beings are human beings, and our love matters, and we fight for who we love and what we believe. Who but Reginald Hudlin would have the imagination to pull a love story out of slavery? If I could spend an hour up here, I could tell you my personal witness about this brother who, when I was at my lowest point, came and pulled me up and picked me up and helped me find a way forward. I wouldn't have the career I have right now had it not been for Reginald Hudlin. And I'm not the only person in this room who can say that. He's not just somebody who creates heroism on the screen. He leads a heroic life. So I want to say I'm proud as an African American that we had Shirley Chisholm in Congress. I'm proud. I'm proud that we had Thurgood Marshall in the courts. I'm proud that we had Barack and Michelle Obama in the White House. And I am proud that we have Reginald Hudlin right here in Hollywood. Bring to the stage my hero, my brother, the man himself, Reginald Hudlin. Where's my brother? Here he comes. Reginald Hudlin. The imagination of one man. A weapon and a tool. I love you, brother. Love you, brother.
Thank you, brother. That was incredible. Thank you, sir.
I'm gonna step over here.
Yes, sir. Wow, thank you, Van. Van's one of those cats who always makes you feel better about yourself as a person. Thank you. It's incredible. And I also feel smarter every time I talk to him. I go, oh, I talked to Van. I can eat off that for a month. Also want to thank that unbelievable performance by Andra Day and Common. It doesn't matter how many times I hear the song, I get goosebumps every time, and that is the brilliance of Diane Warren. Thank you, Diane, for calling me and going, yeah, you're making a movie. I'm going to write a song for it. Okay. And that's the point. I mean, the fact is, this award, which I'm so grateful for, I mean, no award is ever earned alone. And first, I really want to thank the folks who brought us here, the ACLU of Southern California. I want to thank Tom Artenberg of Open Road Films, not only for his support of my film, but of the organization. I want to thank Starlight Media and all the producing partners on Marshall for letting me tell this crucial civil liberty story. I come from a long line of activists, from my great-great-granduncle, who was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, to my mother, who's here tonight, who in her retirement after a lifetime of teaching special education, in her retirement, she decided to kick all the drug dealers out of our neighborhood in East St. Louis where we grew up, and succeeded. I am so grateful for all those role models that they provided, and I try to pass on those lessons to my everyday inspirations, my children, Helena and Alexander. And for them, I thank my partner in everything, Chrisette, who makes everything I do possible. I'm indebted to all those people, but I'm keeping this for me. This is one of those times when I'm getting an award that I really care about, and what makes it even nicer is the other people who are getting an award, because this is a hell of a night. I mean, when you look at the folks who are also getting awards, you look at John Apatow, who somehow recorded conversations in my home and made This Is 40. Gina Rodriguez, I remember getting my whole family to watch Jane the Virgin. And my wife and my daughter were like, this is so good. How did you know it was going to be good? Like, Dad knows something to give Dad some cool points. I worked with Viola Davis on City of Angels, which is a medical series by my friend and mentor, Stephen Bochco. And in the episode, she plays a nurse who was sexually assaulted in the hospital. She was so completely convincing that when she finished shooting the scene, I remember thinking, why is she on set? She needs to go to a hospital. And then I was like, no, she's acting. I just believed everything that happened, and I still, oh my God, why are you doing that with your son? Anyway, and then we have Jane Fonda, who wrote the book. How to be a politically active artist and celebrity. You've done it like none other. God bless you. Her support for the anti-war movement, for civil rights, for black power, for women's rights has never faltered and continues to this day. That's a bunch of entertainers, and we all do that, and we're proud of it. But then there's Doris Huerta. There is no glamour in her life, just the satisfaction of making the world a better place. And all of us should, I mean, she's going to get honored tonight, but let's just give her applause right now. Let's just say thank you. Oh, I forgot, Colin's in the house, too. Dude, just for bringing the afro back. I mean, I'm just all in. So many of our greatest heroes, people like Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, defied unjust laws in the pursuit of justice. What made Thurgood Marshall unique was that he made laws. He took the promise of the American justice system, phrases like all men are created equal, and he brought it, as best he could, into reality. He didn't just fight the power, he became the power. And that's an important thing for us all to remember. Because the opposition tends to stand up on his hind legs and roar real loud and make themselves seem bigger than they are. But we are the majority, and we cannot forget it. We also have to remember that freedom ain't free. And it is exhausting to have to fight the same battles of a previous generation. But the cost of freedom is eternal vigilance, and every generation better be ready to scrap. We don't all have to be Thurgood Marshall. We can be the unlikely ally who wasn't looking for a cause, but stepped up when duty called. We can be the victim who finds the courage to stand up and fight back. We can be the juror who won't accept anything less than the truth. We all have a part to play. So if tonight the ACLU thanks us, we need to thank the ACLU. Marshall is about a search for truth. We are living in an era when the truth as a concept is under attack. There are people constantly trying to warp reality for their short-term needs of money and power. And technology is being used to brainwash a large segment of the population. It is more important than ever for us to hold fast to our values of freedom of the press, freedom of speech, the things that the ACLU fights for every day. But it's not enough for us to have good thoughts and express ourselves in social media. We have to put our money where our hope is. Now, this is a very generous room, but as they say, romance without finance is a nuisance. So if you're already a supporter of the ACLU, which you're hopefully all are, thank you. And if you haven't yet, let's join with Judd, let's match his money, and let's help them stand on the front lines of the fight for freedom. I thank them again for this award, and thank you for your support. Thank you very much.
There you are. So we have a message to you, care of Dolores, and the message is "Si se puede." And I say that because David Lindy and Participant Media have matched your $50,000 tonight. So we are there. If anyone has had trouble with not enough envelopes at their tables, maybe people have given multiple gifts, there's plenty of staff as you make your way through the reception area. So find anyone with an ACLU ribbon and they'll supply you with a contribution card and an envelope. So thank you. The food we've enjoyed tonight was harvested by farm workers who had few rights until our next honoree fought for them. Dolores Huerta began her career as a school teacher, but she soon found that many of her students, the children of migrant farm workers, were struggling with extreme poverty and hunger. So Dolores resolved to help them. She gave up teaching and she began organizing agricultural workers. By 1955, she had founded a union, the Agricultural Workers Association. By 1962, she and Cesar Chavez had co-founded a bigger, stronger union, the National Farm Workers Association, precursor to the United Farm Workers. And just a few years later, she negotiated the first contract between farm workers and growers in U.S. history. By 1965, she had become the lead organizer of one of the most important and successful strikes in U.S. history, the Table Grape Boycott, which lasted more than 5 years. Workers eventually signed a 3-year contract with growers, and the strike led to passage of the Farm Workers' Bill of Rights in California. Looking back now on this history, which I have only just barely sketched, we can't romanticize it and assume progress came without great risk or sacrifice. Dolores gave up stability, the stability of her career, to stand with those in need. She put the movement ahead of herself and her family. Her sole mission was to liberate farm workers. She placed her life and safety in jeopardy on countless occasions. In 1988, she was actually beaten so badly by a baton-wielding police officer that she was put in the hospital for a month. But through all of this, Dolores remained steadfast in her beliefs, and she persisted. And she's persisted through all these years. Today, she continues to develop leaders and train advocates for the working poor, women, and children. As founder and president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation, she travels across the country to support equality and defend civil rights. In honor of the ACLU's long and deep relationship with farm workers, and in admiration of her lifetime devotion to social justice, the ACLU of Southern California is honored to present the 2017 Lifetime Advocate for Justice Award to Dolores Huerta.
Thank you very much. I am so grateful to receive this award from the ACLU. This is like getting the Nobel Prize for Civil Liberties and Civil Rights, right? ACLU. And also to share with you that back there where the farm workers are, it's not that far from here. You just go over the grapevine, and right there you'll find a whole different world. You'll find this world where you have a lot of poverty, a lot of racism, where you have police officers. Bakersfield, California, The Guardian wrote last year, it was the #1 city where people have been killed by law enforcement. And in my own foundation, Dolores Huerta Foundation, we have been recently working on stopping the school-to-prison pipeline. Yeah, we just settled a lawsuit with the Kern High School District because of the huge suspension of African American and Latino children, hundreds of times higher than white children. They now have to have cultural competency training, positive behavior intervention systems, restorative justice, And yes, they have to celebrate African American Month and Hispanic Heritage Month, just to begin. But if that wasn't so bad, at the Bakersfield High School, we recently started a campaign in a town called California City, which is up there near the Mojave Desert. California City, you're not going to believe this, the suspension rate of African American students is 81%. How can this be? How can these children will have no future? And this is going on all over the country. Our children of color are not getting an adequate education, and the only road for them is through the prison system. There in the San Joaquin Valley, 40% of the school districts that have the highest suspension and expulsion rates are right there in the Central Valley of California. So this is an area that we think is more like Alabama than it is like Los Angeles. And the way that our foundation works is that we organize the parents so that they are the ones that can take up the struggle. We're not going to do it for them. They have to learn how to do it for themselves. And we are having some successes in making this happen. But we know, as in the film that you just saw the trailer of, the way that we work with the Farm Workers Union is we taught the farm workers that they had to stand up for themselves. And that is the one thing I think, the one thing that we have to take away from what we're going through right now, to really understand that we have the power, that we have the power, and they have the power. And many of these people, they've never gone to high school or to college. Many of them are undocumented. But the one thing that we teach them, you know what? You have the power to fight the struggle, and if you don't take up the fight, nobody is going to do this for you. You cannot depend on anybody to do it. And I am so happy to hear and to tell you that the ACLU is coming to the Central Valley. So the contributions that you are making tonight will help us change this. And when we think of the Central Valley, we have to think of really how large it is. I just have to have a little commercial here. My own son, Emilio Huerta, is running for Congress. His district, CD21, is one of the poorest in the whole United States of America. It is the size of Maryland. That's how big it is. There is not one single university in his district, but there are plenty of jails. There are plenty of jails. And this is very, very deliberate. As you may have heard, they are now building 5 new prisons for undocumented people. 5 new prisons. And we have to remind people, it is not a crime to cross the border. Because when you cross the border, it is a civil offense. It's not a crime because you're not hurting anybody. But they have made that into a crime so they can fill the jails. I know when we think of the situation that we're in right now, we have to think of the F word, fascism. We have to think of that word, and that it seems that that's where we're going. But the one thing that we have learned is that we have the power to stop it. And it takes people, I do want to mention my good friend Jane Fonda, who is here, who is one of our contributors to help us keep this fight going. Thank you, Jane. She was there with us in the farm worker movement. I remember once we got a contract just because she said, I might boycott your product, okay? And they signed right away. So this shows the power that we all have collectively and that we can do it together. And I want to thank Colin also for taking that knee. Yes, thank you for taking the knee so the rest of us can stand up. So I just want to say to everyone, you know, I know sometimes we kind of get, we feel kind of sad and we feel depressed about what's going on. But I like to quote the poet Pablo Neruda from Chile, who said, they can cut all the flowers, but they can't hold back the spring. They can cut all the flowers, but they can't hold back the spring. and to remember that we are the flowers, right? We are the ones that are going to go out there. We're going to spread the seeds of justice all over this country. And yes, we are going to come back. And just like we did in the 60s, when the farm workers were able to, yes, overcome Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan and win with the help of the American public. All of you out there, thank you very much for all the donations that you gave to the Farm Workers Union. Because of you, farm workers have toilets in the fields, cold drinking water, and the right to collective bargaining, and the respect that they deserve for feeding us every single day. And so if we take those lessons of the 60s and the 70s, we know that we ultimately, we are going to be victorious. And you know, when we think about the racism, the misogyny, the homophobia, the bigotry against poor people, you know what, in a way it's a good thing, because all of those people who fit those labels, they are now identifiable, right? I like identity politics, okay? Let them identify themselves so we will know who they are. We will know who they are. They don't have to expose themselves. And sometimes things have to get so bad, it's like a sore. It has to get red and orange and really ugly. And then we know that we have to do something about it, and that we do have the power to do it. So I just want to say to all of you, yes, keep supporting the ACLU, keep supporting all the nonprofit organizations, and we know that together we can win. And I'm going to ask you all a question, and I know you know the answer, but I want you to shout it out really loud. The question is very simple. I'm going to ask you, who's got the power? Yeah. And I want you to say, we've got the power, okay? And then I'm going to say, what kind of power? And I want you to say, people power. And when we talk about all of the different issues, the different movements, let's not forget the labor movement, right? Let's not forget the labor movement, who is under constant attack, and they are trying to eliminate the labor movement, which means eliminating the middle class. And if we don't have a middle class, we do not have a democracy in the United States of America. Okay, so I'm going to shout it out, and I want you to shout it out really loud. And I want you to shout so loud that the neo-Nazis can hear us, okay? Okay, so let's go. Who's got the power? I think we can do that a little bit louder. Okay, one more time. Who's got the power? What kind of power? All right, are we going to go out there and organize? And by the way, if you want to come down to the Central Valley, put on your tennis shoes, come and knock on some doors up there with poor people, so you can see, like I saw when I first did that, how some people were barely able to live. We invite you to come to Central Valley, come on and knock on some doors, help my son get elected to the Congress, okay? So one more time, who's got the power? What kind of power? Okay, let's go out there, let's go organize, let's talk to people, even people that don't want to listen to us. We can find, we can get through to them, and we talk to them long enough and hard enough. So, are we going to be able to do it out there? Yes. What do we say? ¿Se puede o no se puede? Sí, se puede. Okay, let's all go together with an organized hand clap. Let's say, sí se puede. Let's go. Sí se puede. Thank you. And one more. Let's do a Viva, a long live for the ACLU. I'm going to say Viva the ACLU, and everybody shout a big old Viva. Let's go. Viva the ACLU. Viva. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Thank you very much.
To present the Ramona Ripston Liberty, Justice, and Equality Award, please welcome activist and multi-award winning actor Martin Sheen.
Thank you. The most important needs of every human being on earth are not only food, clothing, and shelter, but equally the need for liberty, justice, and equality. Without the latter, the former are useless. It is the gross inequality of food, clothing, and shelter that divides us, of course, but it is the absolute necessity for liberty, justice, and equality that unites us. Hence, I am deeply honored to present the 2017 ACLU Ramona Ripston Liberty, Justice, and Equality Award to a dear personal friend and fellow actor, Jane Fonda, whose enviable courage and lifelong commitment to peace and social justice activism have been a powerful source of inspiration for more than half a century. I don't know if it is humanly possible to fully comprehend the phenomenon of courage. I suspect divine intervention must surely be at work in the lives of the brave, although clearly it is an invasion of privacy. Nonetheless, into this world, this demented inn, where there is absolutely no room for it at all, the grace of courage comes uninvited and cracks open the unsuspecting but willing heart. Such a heart belonged to Jane Fonda, despite the fact that she was a young and very beautiful international screen star. Like myself, Jane is a product of the 60s, which means our adult lives were shaped in large part by the extraordinary people and events of that remarkable and turbulent decade in the middle of the last century. But frankly, she was far more committed than I or anyone else of our generation, and by a long shot. She fought to ban the bomb. She fought for civil rights. She fought and literally risked her life to end a war which nearly ended her career. Still, she kept on fighting with even greater urgency and resolve. She fought through the 60s, clinging to the absolute certainty that lost causes are the only causes worth fighting for, and that nonviolence was the only weapon to fight with. And she has been fighting by that creed ever since. And all along the way, the grace of courage soared up and flowed out of all those times and places that witnessed her heroic acts of judicious confrontation and nonviolent resistance that took our breath away and renewed the promise, the long-held promise, that one heart with courage is a majority. And so, at this time, the ACLU gratefully acknowledges that promise kept, that dream realized, that heroic warrior for liberty, justice, and equality, Miss Jane Fonda.
Wow. Ah! Woo! What a great night. I am so, thank you. I'm so moved and honored to be part of this evening with Gina and Viola and Judd and everybody. Dolores, we've been friends for 50 years. And Colin, you are woke. Woo! This is a great honor, and it's a great honor to accept this from the beloved Martin Sheen. I love him so much. I've gotten to know him pretty well because he plays my ex-husband in Grace and Frankie. And by the way, there's a whole Grace and Frankie table here. Thank you so much for coming, my friends. All my friends that are here, thank you very much. Martin is, it's hard to convey the depths of his, he talks about courage, of his courage and commitment. He gives real meaning to walking the talk. It's in his blood, in his DNA, it's in his faith. And he's humble about it. He doesn't make a big deal about it, but he, you know, I'll come back from a trip to New York and I'll say the hotel I was staying in, and he said, but it's not unionized. You know, he won't stay in a Hotel Dolores that's not unionized. That's the kind of guy he is. This is a man who really cares about working people. He never, ever forgets the vulnerable and the voiceless among us. And at the same time, as all of us on Grace and Frankie know, he is hysterically funny. He comes into the makeup trailer in the morning and recites a blessing over all of us, including the undeserving, and you know who you are. And then he'll do Hamlet with a Hispanic accent. It goes on. I mean, when there are extras on the set, he just spends all day long talking to the extras. You'd think he was running for office. I wish you would, by the way. But I go back even further with the ACLU than I do with Martin, actually. I've spent a good part of my life as a political magnet, and the ACLU has been there with me every step of the way. Of course, so is the FBI. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful to the FBI because when I was writing my memoirs, I forgot a lot of stuff. And so all I had to do was just 22,000 pages, and I never broke the law even, anyway. But activism came late to me. The first time I was arrested was March of 1970. It was 2 months before Kent State. I was at Fort Lewis in Washington State at a protest organized by the American Civil Liberties, not the American Civil Liberties Union, American Servicemen's Union, because the Army had kidnapped a soldier who was in the brig and sent him to Vietnam. And I was with the writer and lawyer Mark Lane, and I said, what are we gonna do? And he said, we're gonna call the ACLU. And I didn't know what the ACLU was, because see, I'd been living in France for almost a decade. And I remember, because I was pregnant, lying in bed and watching the protests when the anti-war movement marched on the Pentagon. And I thought, oh God, they're so brave. This is so right. I want to be part of that. And so in 1969, I did. I came home in order to be part of that. And because it had been American soldiers when I was living in France, guys who had been in Vietnam and were resisting the war and then came to Paris and sought out compatriots. They were the ones, because they'd seen it firsthand, who helped me understand what the Vietnam War was really about. And so when I came back here in '70 to become an activist, I joined the Vietnam Veterans Against the War, and I was part of the GI movement, which was a movement of active duty servicemen against the war. And it was, by the way, it was the part of the anti-war movement that most worried Nixon, as well it should have. Anyway, and I also joined the indigenous people from the Bay Area who occupied Alcatraz in 1970. And because it was going to be turned into a casino. It had been a prison, and it was going to be made into a casino, and they said, this is our land. We don't want that done. And I learned a lot while I was there. And I quickly learned about the ACLU because right after the election, I mean, boy, we all remember how we felt and where we were, don't we? I mean, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. And the first thing I did was go to Standing Rock. And it was the best thing to do. When in doubt, become active. It's so, it puts the ground back under you. And what was so great, there was a lot, as you know, a lot going on in North Dakota at Standing Rock, and there were people being beaten by the militarized police. And one young Native American woman named Red Fawn had been arrested. She was accused of trying to kill somebody, even though a video shows that she was lying on her stomach with her hands under her body, so she couldn't possibly have done it. But she was in jail, and I called the ACLU. And it just astounded me because there were lawyers all over South Dakota, all over North Dakota, everywhere, all around. There were all these ACLU lawyers that were ready to come to her to her help. She's in a halfway house now. Her trial is set for this January. And if you haven't heard of her, that's just the way they want it. The ACLU says that this is, could set a precedent for the criminalizing of protest. But
Free Red Fawn, hashtag Free Red Fawn.
okay, hashtag Free Red Fawn, yes. Frances Fisher was there with me too. But it impressed me a lot because I knew that the ACLU wasn't just helping me because I was a celebrity, but they were there for people who were voiceless and, and very, very vulnerable. In 1973, I went to the Southern California ACLU because I wanted to sue President Nixon and a lot of people in his administration for violating my First, Fourth, Fifth, and Ninth Amendment rights. Not only had the FBI been spying on me, but my bank records were taken. This had never happened to an American citizen before. And, there were threats against my life, and my children were followed, and J. Edgar Hoover himself had fake news planted in the media about me. It was called black propaganda then. Now it's just called false news. I was arrested in Cleveland for smuggling drugs, and the arresting officer told me while I was being held that orders were coming from the White House. And they were, in fact, they were vitamin pills. But so first, it was Ramona Ripston. She's the one. She was the director of the ACLU of Southern California. Tall, charismatic, dynamic, and boy, was she blonde. I mean, she had a real presence. And with financial support from the late beloved Stanley Scheinbaum, yes, Ramona marshaled attorneys Mark Rosenbaum, who's right over there, brilliant attorney who's still at it, John McTiernan, with Leonard Weinglass volunteering. I mean, that's not a bad legal team, right? And in 1975, we won access to my Freedom of Information Act files. In '79, we settled the case, and part of the settlement included making the FBI admit that they had done all this to me, confess they were wrong, and apologize. Anyway, we won. So it's, I've always loved the ACLU, but boy, after the election, it was like they have become this precious organization that we have to really, really support with everything that we have. We all probably knew right away that a lot of the resistance was going to be happening in the courts, and that's where the ACLU comes in. And I'm really, really grateful for the ACLU, for all of you who've been there. I hope we can continue supporting them. Sexual harassment is a violation of civil liberties, so they've really got their hands full now, on top of everything else. And so again, I want to thank you. I want to thank my fellow awardees tonight. I so admire every single one of you and all that you have done and continue to do. Keep kneeling, Colin, until you can stand up. Thank you all very, very much. You can stand. Thank you.
Returning to the stage, please welcome the president of the ACLU of Southern California, Connie Cheng, and the chair of the ACLU Foundation of Southern California, Sherry Leinwand.
The Bill of Rights dinner has ended, but the evening has not. Please join us for a coffee and dessert reception in the lobby while you wait for the valet line to get shorter.
Not only that, but Van Jones has graciously offered to stay and personalize his new book for you. His latest is Beyond the Messy Truth, How We Came Apart, How We Come Together. If you haven't already purchased your copy, you can do so in the reception area.
And please remember to fill out your donation cards or visit the membership table so you can join us in our crucial work. Thank you for coming and for supporting the Bill of Rights and the ACLU.
We hope this night has re-energized you to get informed, get involved, and stay at it. In the words of Patti Smith, people have the power. Good night.